Theorists of cinema's earliest generations marveled at film's ability to reignite the past with its every projection. You see, a frame of 35mm film literally captures the rays of light, therefore some argued its display bridged time. In the films Raise the Red Lantern and Oldboy, legendary directors Jang and Park Chan-Wook depict ghosts of the past. Today we'll take a look at these two films to answer the question, what was haunting them?
This is not part of the commercial.
I grew up with him, runaways and few neglect victims. He screwed up trying to run a fade, now I get with him. No few my niggas tucking blade and do the stress dinner.
Oldboy is a 2003 action thriller by notable new Korean cinema director Park Chan-Wook, inspired by the manga of the same name. Although the manga is typically written in English in 2 words, which, although a completely fucking useless piece of information, interested me. Not only is Oldboy perhaps the emblem for the new Korean cinema, culminating in global smash hits like Parasite and Train to Busan, its story is also intertwined with how new Korean cinema began. Under US pressure in 1988, the Korean government allowed foreign film companies to distribute their films without passing through local distributors in Korea, and poorly performing homemade flicks marked a record low in 1993. Despite decades under the thumb of American occupation, the Korean chaebols, or family conglomerates, didn't take this lying down. By holding independent film festivals and contests with considerable cash prizes, chaebol-run film companies recruited fresh talent who infused new sensibilities into Korean cinema. In particular, the chaebols supported young directors, spurring an auteur-driven wave much like the great movements of cinema's past. Even though the 1997 financial crisis in Asia caused the chaebols to rein in their film investments, the coal in the train of Korean cinema had already been lit, and it was soon racing down the tracks. Keep this story in mind as we consider the story of Oldboy, in which Oh Dae-soo was held in a mysterious prison for the 15 years preceding the central action of the film. In this cell, there is a single television set, serving as his only method of connection to humanity, for even his food and medical care are provided without interpersonal interaction. Dae-soo's windowless cell jettisons him from society, with the television's mediated imagery as a substitute for reality. The media transitions from fitness training and cooking shows to news reports of tragedies, signaling how the broadcast may not necessarily reflect the world, yet still has supreme power to filter Dae-soo's sense of time completely. The montage reveals the cultural events which occur from 1988 to 2003, depicting events that many of us, like him, only experience vicariously through our television, and yet have become the defining moments of our lives. Through shallow focus and rapid editing, Park's visuals obscure the audience's ability to order these scenes in time, making it difficult to perceive when a time jump has occurred. With the addition of Dae-soo's noir-inspired narration layered over echoing sounds, the film itself obfuscates the audience's sense of identity, in the same manner as the TV obfuscates Dae-soo's. While the montage is abundantly important to understanding the themes of Oldboy, it is just as essential to understand the history that Dae-soo sees through the sequence. There are a plethora of reverberating effects of both Korea's invasion by Imperial Japan's fascist project and the Korean War. The national traumas experienced by Korea in the 20th century encompass colonization and civil war, assassinations, and decades-long states of civil unrest, and the trauma of the century is inherited from the generations which preceded them, through their memories, their narratives, and their very experience. Dae-soo's captivity epitomizes Park's generation, those born in the immediate aftermath of the war because they're disconnected from their own past, never knowing a united Korea. Constantly confronted through fragmented screens and unresolved narratives, a disorienting effect like the television montage within Oldboy results in a society haunted by colonization, war, and division with no clear path to justice. When considering the prolonged intervention in the Korean peninsula, Oldboy clearly becomes a critique on the false promise of market economics. Surveillance capitalism was touted as potentially healing, but instead confined the Korean male. Following decades of emasculating imperialism, they needed to recuperate this male's subjectivity in order to move into the global economy, and Korean cinema stages traumatic behavior as part of an effort to regain a lost psychic wholeness. Here we find the genius of Oldboy, that Dae-soo's transformation into this hyper-violent, emotionally fractured man is a metaphor for South Korea's rapid modernization and re-entry into the global economy. And regardless of the nation's economic success, its ghosts linger. Even the antagonist is this technocratic, hyper-entrepreneurial Korean male who, despite his best efforts, cannot surmount the trauma of his childhood. In this sense, the nation of Korea is the character of Dae-soo, going through the same process that led to the creation of this very film. And while imprisonment energizes the protagonist of Oldboy on a solipsistic quest, retribution against his captor, imprisonment manifests far differently in our second film. Much like Oldboy rose as an emblem of Park's generation of the Korean wave, Jang Yimou and his seminal Raise the Red Lantern are defining works of the fifth generation. This term is exceedingly specific, far more than most historical film waves, because it refers exclusively to the fifth graduating class of the Beijing Film Academy from 1978. After the smash and resumption of college entrance examination admissions, Beijing Film Academy recruited and cultivated the first mainly directing department, but also extended into photography, fine arts, and other graduates. Unlike Oldboy, the film is not written by its director, and a screenwriter, Ni Zhen, was brought in to write the film. But like Oldboy, it is also an adaptation, this time of the 1990 novella Wives and Concubines by Su Tong. Zhang's Raise the Red Lantern follows Song Lian, a young woman married to a wealthy warlord, as his fourth wife. Throughout the narrative, her arc reveals the machinations of oppressive traditions of Republican China and how they continue to affect women in Zhang's present. Zhang sets nearly the entire film in the Chen family's ancestral manner, embellishing Song Lian's feelings of confinement and providing him a metaphorical graveyard. To extend the metaphor for imprisonment through the soundscape, Zhang ornaments the estate's labyrinthian halls with disembodied sounds such as the third mistress's singing, Fei Pu's flute, the rattling of the foot massager, and various screams, all of which agitate the otherwise impassive camera. The manor itself transforms into a psychological prison where history is repressed, and the haunting, disjointed soundscape reflects Song Lian's internal unraveling. The scene following the third mistress, Mei Shan's execution, epitomizes these trends and serves as testament to the film's thesis. As guards swarm Mei Shan's room, a close-up shot reveals a phonograph, soaked in red lantern glow, playing her vinyl voice. Although once a symbol of desirability, her vocals now echo detached from form, serving not as the evocation of a memory, but as a ghostly exercise in reanimation, much like the very action of projecting film. Third Mistress persists even after her body is gone. After the camera has nothing to look at or refuse to look at, she is there. Mei Shan's spectral presence is a form of protest, one that the camera attempts to erase, but that persists in the sonic realm. Although Raise the Red Lantern is a period piece, it is impossible to divorce the work from its production's place and time, as the use of a handheld camera and ambient sound indicate Zhang's belonging to the fifth generation, a transitional group whose films rely on the techniques, assumptions, and themes of the past. Quite simply, it is difficult to overestimate the pervasive presence of the Chinese socialist past informing the subjectivity of the fifth generation of filmmakers, because they began their film journey only 2 years after the formal end of the Cultural Revolution. Raise the Red Lantern scathingly indicts the patriarchal, class-based household system of the Republic of China, which Mao's regime sought to uproot. Mei Shan's ghostly return and Song Lian's ruinous hysteria are metaphors for the silent resistance and individual suffering that never fully dissipate. As the fifth generation embraced some aspects of social realism while distancing from others, Zhang chose not to romanticize the revolution or the pastoral subject, but instead to raise the ghosts of China's past. Coined in his 1993 book Specters of Marx, Jacques Derrida's concept of hauntology refers to the presence of elements from the past that linger in the present. Derrida uses the figure of a ghost to illustrate past identities, challenging their stability through cyclical repetition, and thereby viewing history as never over. As simply as I can put it for the sake of this video, Derrida basically argues that any form of power, government, or economy must suppress its alternate rivals. And what that results in is erased histories and marginalized voices still recurring in the background like ghosts. In Oldboy and Raise the Red Lantern, they emerge because the genre film is particularly apt at materializing haunting subtext, literally in the form of ghosts. Derrida's ghosts mark moments of failed inheritance between past and present, or what Julian calls ideological disjunctures. In the case of Korea at the turn of the century, Confucian capitalism was imbued with power, and the residual selves at the end of Oldboy thus ultimately behave less like allegorical figures, and more like markers of temporal breaches that give rise to uncertainty about the foundations of a national imaginary. Lacking a coherent nationalistic narrative, these residual selves persist as ghosts, signaling the fragmentation at the core of modern Korean identity. By the same token, Raise the Red Lantern creates a spectral atmosphere where the past refuses to remain there, resulting from similar ideological disjunctures to Oldboy, but from different socio-political conditions. Within Raise the Red Lantern, there's a transition from Imperial China to the Republic of China, which can be mapped over the transition that happened in Zhang's own life, which was the shift from the Republic of China to the People's Republic of China, creating the very same ideological disjunctures that Jian writes about in Korea. Hauntology deepens the understanding of Raise the Red Lantern and Oldboy by positioning these films not merely as narratives of cyclical suffering, but as cinematic expressions of unresolved historical trauma that persist as ghosts. For both films, history feels physically present, yet inaccessible, and therefore unresolvable. The disembodied voice of Meishan playing through the phonograph in Raise the Red Lantern, like the half-dead They Sue at the close of Oldboy, corporealizes memory as Spectre. These hauntings challenge the ideological frameworks of both nations' modernities, China's post-Mao legacy and South Korea's post-war identity, by emphasizing that corpses from historical violence do not disappear with economic growth. Indeed, there is a specter haunting the world, the specter of communism.
Only bring it so I'm in the stew with Tony Seltzer. We just raising hell. What they do me in that cell for ain't even give me bail. I try to prove